In this video, I'm going to discuss the 5 mistakes that I see home buyers make constantly. Yeah, everybody makes mistakes, but you don't want to make these 5. If you want to know what they are, stay tuned because I'm going to get into it right now. Hey everybody, welcome back to Info on the Go, the show where I give tips, tricks, and insight on how to buy, sell, or invest in real estate in Southern California. So if that sounds like something that you like, please hit that subscribe button. Make sure you tap that bell so you're notified when I upload new additions to YouTube every Friday. Now, if you're thinking about relocating to the LA metro area, my team and I, we're getting calls constantly from people just like you who want to know the skinny on what it's like to live in Los Angeles. So make sure you shoot us a phone call, a text, or an email. We're more than happy to let you know what it's like to live in Southern California. And guess what? We got your back. Now, here's a common mistake that I see people make all the time when thinking about buying a house. They don't have their financial house in order. And there's some steps that you want to take to get your financial house in order. So number 1 is let's work on eliminating or paying off that debt. We want to work to eliminate to pay off that debt or at least pay it down. And the reason is because when you go to apply for a mortgage, they look at something called your credit utilization. Now, your credit utilization measures how much debt you've used versus how much your total limit is on all of your credit cards and things of that nature. If your credit utilization rate is really high, it can really affect your FICO score, your credit score, because it comprises about 30% of that score. The other huge portion of that is your payment history. So you want to make sure that you pay your bills on time and that you don't overextend yourself using your credit. Next thing we want to do, increase your savings. The studies just came out. 70% of Americans don't even have $1,000 saved up, which means if an emergency happens, they're pretty much SOL, and you don't want that to be you. So the idea is to save at least 3 to 6 months of living expenses so that you have a cushion should anything happen, things like COVID. But not only are you going to need to save just for a rainy day and emergency fund, you're going to need to save for your down payment. And that could be anywhere from 3.5% all the way up to 20%. But who has 20%? So let's just keep it conservative and say we're going to do 3.5%. So we need to save aggressively to reach that 3.5% of whatever the purchase price is going to be. But that's not all, because you're also going to have stuff like closing costs and some of those kind of non-recurrent fees. So your closing costs are going to average between 2 and 4% depending on where you are. Now here where I'm at, it's usually roughly between 2 and 2.5%. So let's just say 2.5%. So you're going to need 3.5% for your down payment, 2.5% for your closing costs, which is 6% of the total purchase price. But you're also going to need to save money for things like an appraisal and for a home inspection. If you're going to go really deeper than that, you're going to have to pay a plumbing inspection and maybe an electrician to come out and inspect that too. And then you want to make sure that your credit is clean. It would really suck for you to get all juiced up to want to go buy a house. You saved all this money and then you go to apply for a mortgage and they say, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, your credit is jacked up. So we want to work on clearing up any negative items off of our credit. Now, what I typically tell my clients to do who are extremely credit challenged is go to annualcreditreport.com, where they provide 3 free credit reports per year. You get 1 from each bureau, 1 from TransUnion, 1 from Experian, and 1 from Equifax. So what I will tell them is order 1 every 3 months from each of those bureaus. That way you get to track what your progress is and how you're doing. Now, if you're trying to move a little bit faster, order all 3 at once so that you can see across the board what is on your credit report and what negative items you may need to take care of. Now, again, going back to those who are doing it once every 3 months, each of those reports is going to be different. Now, they should be roughly the same, but there may be some negative items on one report that aren't on another report. So the only reason I say you pull 1 per 3 months is because we're just really tracking and measuring. We already know the timeline is sometime in the horizon, but we want to track and measure to see where our progress is at. And we don't want to burn through all 3 of those credit reports at one time. So the second mistake that I see is people don't want to go get pre-approved by a lender. And the reasons are manyfold, but the biggest reason that I hear is that they don't want to take the credit hit when the lender pulls their credit. Now, yes, it is going to affect your credit, but you still need to know where you're at, because without it, you're going to have a very vague idea of what you can buy, what you can afford. So you need to go get pre-approved by a lender. And I'll talk about kind of shopping for rates a little bit later, but let's just start with this one right here. Some people will say, Dietrich, I made 6 figures a year. I should be easily able to go out and buy a $700,000, $800,000 house. Yeah, this could be the case, but let's just assume that you may have some dings on your credit. Those dings are a negative impact on you going to get pre-approved for a mortgage, and they could essentially lower what you would get in terms of the max amount. They could raise the interest rate because of that, or it could eliminate you altogether from being able to purchase a home. The third thing that people do, and this is not so much them, but it's more the lender, but you need to be aware of this, is using gross income versus net income, or what I call your take-home pay, right? So when you go to get pre-approved for a mortgage, the lender is going to use your gross income because they don't know what you take home on average, right? So it's just kind of the baseline that they use. They can only guess. Why guess when they know exactly what you pull in as a gross? That's why they use that amount. Now, while we're talking about income, the lender is also going to apply something called a DTI, or debt to income ratio. And what that looks at is how much debt you have going out versus how much income you have going in. The number that they really want to see is somewhere around 43%. But I'm going to encourage you, try to keep your DTI ratio somewhere between 25 and 38%, something that I call the safety zone. Stay inside the safety zone. And if you get a lender that's trying to push you into purchasing a house when you have a DTI of about 50%, also, the lender is going to give you a max amount for your pre-approval. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to go out and buy a house for that amount. You can purchase a house that's for a lesser amount. And in fact, I would encourage you to do so. You don't have to burn through all of that, one, because you may not need it and it's going to save you money. Now, you're probably renting, and so you may want your rent payments to equal about what your monthly mortgage would be. Could it happen? Possibly. Very highly unlikely, because you are purchasing a huge asset in terms of a house. It's probably the biggest purchase that you're ever going to make. So your payments probably won't be the same. The difference between those amounts is what we call payment shock. And it shouldn't really be that great. But what should be great is the amount of force that you use to press that like button. So please do that right now. It just lets YouTube know that you're enjoying this content, and hopefully they push it out to other people who will enjoy the content.
Number 4.
Not shopping around for different rates and terms. So contrary to what you may think, every lender doesn't have the same rates, they don't charge the same points, and they don't have access to the exact same programs. Things like down payment assistance programs or first-time homebuyer programs. What I find really interesting is that most of you will shop the web for things like airline tickets, hotels, appliances, you name it. You'll shop around for all of that stuff, but you won't shop around for lenders when it's coming to perhaps the biggest purchase of your life, in a house. Why would you not do that? It's perhaps the largest purchase that you're ever going to make. So shop around. Now, if you're not shopping around because you're afraid that all of those inquiries are going to negatively impact your credit, you're sort of right, but not really. Here's a little secret. If you do that shopping within a 15-day window, all those inquiries only count as one hit. And the fifth mistake that I commonly see buyers make is opening new lines of credit while they're in escrow. This is one of those things that drives real estate professionals crazy. We work really hard to find the house, to put the offer in, to get it accepted, to do some of the behind the scenes work that many people don't see to make sure that the deal goes through. And just before we get to the closing table, the lender calls and says the underwriter didn't approve the loan. Come to find out, the buyer purchased a new car or opened up a new line of credit to purchase some new furniture and maxed out that credit. Big mistake. Now, the lender is constantly monitoring your credit, and about a week before closing, they're going to pull your credit one last time. If your DTI has increased or your credit score has fallen, it can have drastic consequences on your loan. It may cause them to raise your interest rate. It may cause them to charge you higher fees. It may delay your closing or put the kibosh on it and stop your closing altogether. Now, I know I told you these are 5 mistakes that home buyers make. I'm going to give you a 6th mistake, and this is a bonus one. This one is really crucial because we are in a seller's market right now. So remember, I told you, you don't have to purchase a home for your max loan amount that you've been pre-approved for. I would strongly recommend that you look at houses that are between $30,000 and $50,000 less, depending on your market, of course. I'm in LA, so that's why I'm using such a high figure. $30,000 to $50,000 less than what you've been pre-approved for. The reason is, because the market is so competitive right now, you don't want to go at your max price and somebody overbid you. Well, if they overbid you, guess what? You can't go any higher. But if you start lower, you have room to negotiate up, right? Now, keep in mind that the lender is only going to loan you what the house appraises for. And so the seller might ask you to cover the difference, which means they want you to come out of pocket for the extra whatever amount of money that it's going to be between what you offered and what the appraisal comes in at. Now, there's ways to work around that. I won't get into that right now, but this is a strategy to help you in a seller's market. We all make mistakes, but if you follow these tips, you'll be well on your way to home ownership. In fact, you should catch episode 48, where I discuss how much money you actually need to save for a house. And you can catch that video right here.